Okay, so those of you in the room hopefully are here for a Washington update, right? Because we let the Oregon people go over there, so it's nice to be able to be just a Washington group. This is Dennis Small, our EdTech director, and I'm just going to let him take us through the insurmountable opportunities.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you, and delighted to have a chance to share this with you. So some of this will be new to some of you. Some of this will be old news to some of you, but hopefully at least parts of this will be food for thought for some of you. So we'll double for that part. What I'm hoping to do is both give you some thoughts about things that are going on and updates and so forth, but also then as we get to some of the pain points that I'll share with you, maybe have a little dialogue about anybody having success or thoughts about ways that they're actually getting past some of these things that keep me up at night, and probably some of you as well. So we'll try to keep it on the positive side, but share good news and bad news that way. All right. So the big initiative right now is updating the EdTech Standards, at least for me. The good news is we're really within striking distance of that. The spoiler alert is that on May 18th, we'll be adopting the 2016 ISTE standards for students. And if you haven't seen those, they are really, really wonderful and aspirational. They really talk to the whole idea of an empowered learner. They're the kind of thing that even your most reluctant tech teachers using or not using tech can get behind in terms of those are things they want for their kids. They may not feel comfortable using technology yet to do it, but when we talk about online digital citizens and empowered learners and things like that, those are all things that really resonate with a lot of teachers, and so I think it's a great starting place that way. A couple of things that we're adding to that in the document that will come out on the 18th. One is samples of student performance, and I really want to underscore samples, so those of you who are on the implementation side of things like that, this is not the checklist of do this, do this, do this, do this, and you got it nailed, because no, that's not the way standards work. We give you the high-level stuff, and then it really is local control for you to decide what kinds of things. On the other hand, if you have teachers that are trying to figure out, well, what might that look like in the classroom? That's the idea of the samples, to say, here's a sample activity that you might see that would pull that in. A second piece that we think will be really helpful to folks is this whole idea of connected standards. So, and I'll get it right this time, we actually looked at the computer science standards, the ELA, the math, the science, the PE, the C3 frameworks, which is kind of the national social studies one, the current social studies standards, and we looked at kind of where are there places at a deep level in the same grade that you can actually make a logical connection to have an integrated lesson that would address both a content standard and that EdTech standard. It's way too easy to do just kind of a word search and says, well, it says technology here in the ELA stuff, so that means it makes sense to do technology. Well, that's not what we're talking about. This is really more a specific performance indicator within the EdTech standards, and a very specific, depending on what the terminology is, it might be a performance indicator, it might be evidence of learning, it might be GLE on the old social studies, but that really aligns well and has the same kind of cognitive demand. And then the last one, which we did with a little bit of trepidation, and if you've already heard this one from me, my apologies, but this is the sample optional use, not required, not prescribed by the state, not anything other than for your use if you wish kind of thing. We had a lot of folks that said, why do we have to reinvent the wheel? It really would be nice if we had a sample scope and sequence that we can at least use as a jumping off place. So SPI is never, ever, ever, ever going to tell schools how to teach. We just don't go there. We provide the standards. At the local level, you pick the instructional materials, you pick the curriculum, you do all the other stuff in terms of implementing that. And yet, we had a lot of folks say, could you at least give us a sample one that we can use as a starting place if we choose? So again, it will be in the appendix, so you're not confusing it with the real standards and all that other good stuff that way, but we will have a sample scope and sequence. It's been a very interesting genesis. It actually started in Nebraska when the Common Core standards were new, which are now our state standards. We don't call them Common Core anymore, but in any case, and was aligning the old ISTE standards from 2007 to those Common Core. Then as the next-gen science standards came out, then they added alignments for that in terms of scope and sequence. Long Beach Unified and Fresno Unified down in California added some alignments to it with some of the different standards. And then in our state, Spokane School District and Federal Way School District have done additional work with it. It's all on the Creative Commons license thing, so you have free access to change it, modify it, things like that. But it gets down to the nitty-gritty of, at first grade, this is where I'd introduce this concept, or in third grade would be working on developing this, or in sixth grade would be perfecting this one. And again, with all those caveats of you can change any part of it and customize it in any way that works for you. But that will be another piece of what we are calling the value adds available in that. And again, if you haven't seen the standards themselves, it's really, really powerful, aspirational kind of thing in terms of innovative designer, computational thinker. A lot of similarities to our 2008 standards, and yet there are some very unique and different things. So computational thinking did not show up at all in 2008. So if you're kind of backwards mapping, most things will map pretty well. That one has no analogous part in 2008 because it really wasn't on the radar very much, or at least was kind of segregated out in different places. Questions on the EdTech standards? All right, big initiative number 2, digital citizenship. So part of this is already in play, and depending on your district, they may or may not have paid attention to this, so just reminding them gently right now. We sent out a bulletin in December to remind districts about this. Basically, in 2016, Substitute Senate Bill 6273 said that starting in this school year, so 17-18, that every district should be revisiting their electronic resources policy. If you aren't in the genre of dealing with board policies, this is 2022. It's kind of the basis for most of your acceptable use policies, or unacceptable use policies in some cases. But in any case, in many cases, it dates back to 1998 when we first got into WEDNET, or 2002 when SEPA passed, and some of them haven't been updated since then, so it might well be a good opportunity to think about the fact that chat rooms are probably not the genre of things that we need to be teaching about quite yet. Anyway, but the very specific language is that starting this year, and we waited until December 1st to even send the word out, because that's when the model policy from WASDA was updated that districts can choose to use if they want with their boards. But that they need to be every year looking at their electronic resources policy and determining if an update is needed, and then obviously making it if it is. So notice the delicate dance here. The legislature did not say, thou shalt update your policy. It says, thou shalt have a process with stakeholder input where you look and see if that's needed. Okay? So that's part of the dance already. And then the other part was that this was in the kind of framework of digital citizenship and media literacy. What they didn't say is, thou shalt teach digital citizenship and media literacy. They said, WASDA will produce some kind of resources to support that, but that's up to the local district to decide if either A, they embed digital citizenship and media literacy in their electronic resources policy, have a separate policy, or have no policy about it. It's not a requirement, even though the revisiting of this specific policy is a requirement on an annual basis starting this year. The other thing that WASDA, so WASDA, sorry, acronym alert, Washington State School Directors Association, so that's the school board kind of association that produces these model policies, put together a checklist, and some of you found it helpful and some of you found it frightening, and everything in between, but basically it's a list of issues that school boards and district leaders might want to consider around digital citizenship in terms of who's responsible for what, have you been thinking about this kind of thing, what are you doing about student data privacy, some of the big hot issues that hopefully at least there's been some conversations around that, and if not, might be a good conversation starter for those. So if you haven't had a chance to look at that, be sure to check that out, and again, know that they're not saying that you should solve all those problems right away, or that everything that's on that checklist is something that you can address right away. But at least there are things to be thinking about and talking about within your district if you are under it. Yeah.
This is maybe a little bit of an odd question.
Sure.
Typically with policy and procedure is fairly straightforward. Policy,
Yes.
Defines procedures, execution.
Exactly.
That list was a little bit odd in terms of where it would fit in
Yes.
either, because it was more of a reflective Q&A for a district. So candidly it was a little bit confusing as to as a
Yes.
LEA what the true intent of that was, whether it was we should adopt this pro forma so that we're thinking about it, or whether we should be producing a procedure which addresses the items within that.
Yeah, very much the latter. And I agree with you. It was quite confusing because they actually published it as a policy, and it's not.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. So under the radar, they did publish a sample policy for digital citizenship and media literacy, which basically consists of just definitions of those two.
Right.
2023. Thank you. Yeah. Woo. All right. And so that's probably more on the order of policy. But what they were shying away from is because the legislation didn't say you have to do that. They really want it to be more of a conversation starter. I still wish they would have called this what it is, a checklist, instead of publishing it as looking like a policy thing, because, yeah, I think it's confusing too. Yeah.
Well, it still says the sample is 2023 FF.
Yes,
so,
right.
I mean, it's differentiated some.
Yeah, oh yeah, but,
It's just standard policy.
right, but
It's tied up
it really is a different animal. Yeah, 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 yeah. And part of that was the disconnect between what the legislature asked for and what they heard from their members would be helpful. But thank you. Yeah.
Just remember that WASDA's members are school board.
Yeah. No. Well, and basically the school board said, "Don't tell us that we have to do that." Yeah. And so this was their kind of gentle way to get there. But again, by the nomenclature, I think it confused some folks. Yeah. So again, just to be real clear, even though this was what came forward as a policy driver, if you will, it is not policy. It really is more as you're reflecting on your current policy and either deciding to add digital citizenship literacy to the existing electronic resources, which would be one approach, or having a separate policy, which some districts have for those, or not having a policy for that at all. Again, all those three are legitimate kinds of things. Here are issues to be thinking about, and I think it's valuable that way, but again, I think it was confusing to folks as well. Yeah. All right, well, and then, with huge apologies for yet another survey this year. Don't you get tired of those OSPI folks? But this was one that we have to do. So, by the way, people politely ask me, is this required? And so I'll give you the nuanced answer there. It is required of OSPI to conduct the survey. It is required of us to report the results. We would love to have results from every district. Would you get dinged or called out or shamed or whatever if you didn't respond? Well, shamed maybe, but no. But
You know who you are.
yeah. But I try to. Exactly. Yeah. Anyway, but on the other hand, this is an area where we really don't have good data, and so for all I feel badly about asking you to fill out another survey, this is data that I think will be very helpful, not just for me or for you, but I really want to leverage this to go back to the legislature. They didn't ask us for a report, but I'm going to give them one anyway, because you'll notice part of the questions also have to do with what kinds of supports do you need in terms of the gap between being able to implement this right now. And so I won't be at all surprised if a lot of folks mention like professional development and some of the other things that we know are incredibly important in making this happen that aren't being funded right now and that they might want to consider. So that's just Dennis's unhidden agenda and a bias in this whole thing. So that as you look at the questions, you wonder why I'm asking about that. That's why, because I really want to be able to say 86% of school districts, or whatever the result. Anyway, I won't make up numbers, but so just to be real clear though, we actually have the questions so you can download them and look at them first, especially because Survey Gizmo is not very flexible with you start in and you got to finish it, as opposed to that said, if you get partway through it and you bail out and you want to come back in and let me know, I can actually restart it for you. On the other hand, early results suggest it's about 4 or 5 minutes on either part of the survey, so we really did try to keep it very short, and so hopefully people won't be complaining too much other than, really, another one? Yeah. All right, and the hardest part on this one, and again, really appreciate your good thinking on this, is who do you ask? So at the district level, in many cases it's you. Whoever the tech person is will at least know who the right person is to ask. But at the building level, it depends. So it might be a teacher librarian, it might be your tech TOSA if you have one, it might be a tech specialist if you have one, it might be the principal, it might be a building leader of some kind. But whoever is the right person, deputize them to answer. And I tried to send it out very widely to all the different things. And again, my apologies if you're on 3 or 4 on my list, you probably got it 3 or 4 times. But really wanted to put it in front of lots of different audiences because part of the challenge around digital citizenship is who owns it. On the internet safety side, most of you get to own some of that because you get to report that on the CEPA thing every year. But in terms of the more proactive side of digital citizenship, if your district has initiatives with that, it depends. Some cases it's all done through the teacher librarians. In other cases, they really are trying to get it intentionally out in all classrooms, not without a fight sometimes, but it's an interesting thing. Anyway, so again, that would be helpful, and we will definitely roll up the results. So again, this is not about saying your district is deficient in there. We'll have a summary of kind of high-level stuff that we'll publish and make available. However, if at any point, just as with the tech survey data, you find it helpful to have the specific data, it is all public data, and I'm delighted to share it with you individually too if you want. I will pull out the contact information as I always do and things like that, so you're not getting spam from folks that want to look at stuff. But yeah. All right, what else is happening? Well, lots of stuff. So online assessment, many of you are bearing well with that, hopefully. For the most part, at least until our Windows update thing that came out today, I was going to say we're in pretty good shape on most things. The one place where it's been less than satisfactory, at least for me, and this is just Dennis's bias, is the whole speech-to-text thing. When we did the assessment webinar 2.5 weeks ago, at that point, AIR told us the only thing that works is Dragon Naturally Speaking and only on Windows and only on Mac. We have found out since then, so you got an email from me about a week ago. We're working with the Special EdTech Center to do some testing. It turns out read and write does work just fine with Mac or PC, but you have to do a couple of tweaks with it. And so there's a link to the website there where they've given you some good documents as to what works with that. That still only means Mac or PC, so if you're running Chrome or iOS, there is no speech-to-text alternative other than another platform. And we'll talk about that in terms of things that worry me and bother me, but in terms of where we're at right now, that's kind of the latest on that. We did find out just recently that the Chrome, why can't I remember that? Anybody remember? Is the, huh? No, it's the tablet mode, yeah. There's a new tablet mode option in starting with Chrome OS 64, but only on certain machines. And that's a problem too. So just word of the wise, don't use it. It breaks things, yeah. Or AIR breaks it, whichever direction it goes, yeah. But in general, online assessment actually is starting to be a lot smoother than it was in past years. ELPA 21 still had some challenges with the audio stuff, but in terms of smarter balance, anybody are feeling really, really tense about it this year? I feel like it's actually going pretty smooth comparatively. Again, not that there aren't little tweaks around that yeah, well, yes, right, yes, you're here and not having to pick up problems at the district, but yeah, again, this is one of those where hopefully each year gets a little smoother until they figure out something else to do. Yeah. Anyway, all right. Open education resources. lots of activity of that at the state level, and one of the things I want to call to your attention, some of you have been to some of the OER summits, so you've seen that, but we put together with the help of a lot of educators. There's already some great rubrics for kind of quality review of OER, Open Education Resources, instructional materials. So there's an Equip rubric and there's an Achieve rubric that a lot of your schools are using when they're looking at those resources. We also put together, and it's available as an open resource, and so there's a link to that on this PowerPoint, and I'll show you where to find that. A technology consideration. So as hopefully, this is best practice. It doesn't always happen in some of our districts, but as hopefully the team of instructional people and technology people are together looking at potential instructional resources that happen to be digital, that they can have a lens for not only thinking about the quality of them instructionally, but what are some of the considerations to make it work technologically. So everything from, does it involve tweaking our filter? Does it have streaming video? What devices does it work with? Just a lot of the kinds of things that you're kind of anecdotally doing, but that kind of goes through a checklist to put it in front of people and to hopefully have that dialogue. And again, the unhidden agenda there is that we really need, for any kind of digital resources, and again, I'm preaching to the choir here on that, but you can go back and tell your curriculum people, you heard it here too, that the curriculum people and the tech people need to be looking at it jointly, not just the curriculum people, and not just the tech people. So we shouldn't be telling them what to use just based on what is easy for us to not filter, but by the same token, they shouldn't be picking out the coolest and latest thing without thinking about, does it work with our devices, and is the terms of service appropriate, and does it protect student data privacy, and just all the things that come with that territory. So encourage you, if you haven't seen that, to download that and feel free to use it or modify it or things like that. K20 network, a lot of you are on that, and Zoom video conferencing has been a mitigated success. If you're not already using that, please let me know, and I'll get you some of the free licenses that are available for that. I was hoping that within maybe 2 or 3 years it might more or less replace the room-based video conferencing. No, we're there, and it's been about 9 months that we've been thoroughly using it. It's been available for about a year and a half, but the MCU usage for room-based stuff is almost nil within K-12, and that means that Zoom video conferencing is the way that people are going with that. And it's because of the flexibility, because it works so well. I mean, it's I hear from a lot of you, just even your somewhat reluctant administrators, the first time they use it, are going, wow, I can do this. It's pretty easy. Yeah, and again, it works with all kinds of different devices, and it just works. So again, if you're not already using Zoom, and we do have plenty of licenses, if you need more, please don't hesitate. Let me know. I can turn it around in a week and get you more licenses. So the other positive news there. So some of you appropriately asked, is that always going to be free? And the answer was a hopeful yes. And the wonderful answer is that the cost savings of not having to pay for maintenance on one of the MCUs next year is probably more than going to cover the entire cost of Zoom video conferencing. So, yeah, I'm not allowed to say these things yet because other people have to vote on it and decide on it. But as I read the tea leaves, there should be no reason that we can't continue to make it available for free and pretty much unlimited as it is right now. So, yeah. DDoS mitigation, you haven't heard much about because it's one of those things where it's kind of sensitive to talk about it. I can tell you that in the last 3 months, there were about 12 full-on attacks that were diverted through the DDoS mitigation, of which 9 of those were in K-12. We're going to try to figure out a way to get this out on a regular basis to you at this very high level. Again, people probably don't want their district names necessarily going out as to who was attacked, but it's good to know that it actually is working and so forth. There were also about 250 probing attacks that were intercepted as well. And the interesting thing there is you never know for sure, is that a precursor to a full-on DDoS attack, or is that just somebody messing around? And so we don't know how many other DDoS attacks were averted by repulsing those probing attacks, but we suspect, at least 20 or 30 more probably decided that it wasn't going to work because their probe didn't work either. So it's an interesting dance, but again, it's been very successful, and we're right in the heart of testing, which is historically when DDoS things tend to rise the most, especially within K-12. What a coincidence. And so far we haven't seen that correlation yet this year, so I'll keep you posted on that. But yeah. Continued affordability. That's certainly one of my big concerns, and I feel like we're on solid ground there, but just want to let you know that that's definitely on the radar. We were able to, starting in 2013, move to a model that went from the 95th percentile of usage and kind of that backwards pay after the fact, which, boy, talk about a bad idea for school districts not knowing how much it's going to cost until after the fact. And to basically saying, here's your rate, and we won't have to raise it no matter what your usage is. And as far as I can tell, we're going to be golden for that. We won't know for sure, as always, until we get the next biennial budget put in place, which happens in August this year. But so far, things look really good that way. Yeah.
Would it be worth mentioning the new perspective build out of K-20?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. I forget which audiences I've talked to about different things. So if you haven't been in the loop on this, and actually I've shared it with some groups, but we haven't officially announced it yet, but it's official enough. I'm going to do a spoiler alert here anyway. Within the next 3 months, and potentially sooner, we'll be upgrading the backbone for K-20 from 40 gigabits per second to 100 gigabits per second. And as part of that, we'll be able to split the path from Spokane to Seattle and from Seattle to Portland onto two divergent and separate paths, so that if there is an outage, you wouldn't have to swing around. Right now, if there's an outage, it's a loop, and you can still swing around the rest of the state, but it's obviously not the preferred way to go, whereas this will be actually two paths of 50 gigabits going across. I think there's one place along I-90 where there's one bridge that, if that one bridge goes out, we're all screwed. But other than that, they are truly divergent paths, and so that'll be very nice. But yeah, we were able to build it, and that's just a reflection of the incredible continued growth that happened. If you haven't looked at the router stats, your usage each year on average is growing between 40 and 50%. I mean, the numbers there just get crazy real fast. So I'm delighted that even though we're nowhere close to pushing the 40 gigabit part yet, we will be. And so we need to plan for that. And likewise, we just did a procurement for the ISP from the Gigapop and have actually quadrupled the amount of availability for that for the next few years as well, just in preparation for the amazing growth that you all are producing, which goodness, one of those wonderful problems, isn't it? Yeah. We should all have problems like, yeah, all that good stuff. Okay. Technology survey. Wow. First of all, thank you. I know it's an imposition every year. We are going to move to Server Gizmo next year. I know that'll really make those of you who are loving the EDS survey that we have, but and it will also mean that you'll be able to upload the whole file if you have it all there, as opposed to have to do it one by one by one. And again, nobody's ever asked for that before. So yeah, so it should be a little bit better next year. But that's the one that just caught my eye. We have, as of this year now, nearly as many devices as we have students. Now, does that translate into one-to-one everywhere? No, it sure doesn't. In fact, interestingly, in some cases, it's more like 2 computers for every 1 student, because you've got some old stuff sitting in a lab that got counted as part of that as well. But what it does say is that we are definitely moving dramatically towards that possibility of one-to-one. And certainly is reflected, as you reported on your one-to-one initiatives, that the vast majority of districts are either dipping their toe in the water or fully engulfed in it, or somewhere in the middle there. And along with that, as won't surprise very many of you, the installed base of Windows is virtually tied now with Chrome, as at 43.2 for Chrome and 44% for all versions of Windows. And again, remember, that's installed base, so that means that the growth of the Chrome actually is dramatically more than that in terms of new devices out there. And still about 12% iOS. The Mac OS is down to about 2.3% statewide. The number of students with email accounts is up to 66% now, which is, again, a dramatic increase over the last few years. For a lot of years, it was like about 20%, and then about 3 years ago, it jumped up to about 40%. Last year, it was 61. This year, it's 66%. So those are district-issued email accounts for students.
Hey, Dennis.
Yeah.
How we stack up against other states?
Yes and no. I mean, there are some things that I've seen some national stats on. There are other things that it's apples to oranges, and so it's hard to say. The two places where our state looks really, really good nationally, and I don't know if that means top 10 or top 5, but it's somewhere in the top percentiles, are just raw number of devices. That's an incredible, and then connectivity. Our state is in really, really good shape that way. So you'll see me mention on next thing in terms of future initiatives that we got some money from the legislature to match E-rate discounts for the few places that still can't get fiber to their buildings and the 1 or 2 districts that can't. But we have literally 2 districts. So that's Steakin, who's chosen, thank you very much, they don't want to get access to the internet at this point in their life. And Damon School District, which is a little place outside of Ellensburg with about 40 kids. It has a cable modem with 7 megs right now. Those are the only 2 places that do not have broadband access to the internet anywhere in our state. Anywhere. In fact, in your area, the challenge that we're still having with Trout Lake. Yeah, is to get a stable 100 megabit connection there, but they're at least at 30 megabits right now.
Yes, we're going to go put a tower up.
There we go. All right, yeah. Anyway, but that's the last that's even less than 100 megabits right now. So
Great.
Yeah, and then there are literally 6 buildings in the state that have huge challenges with connectivity, and they are in very interesting places. So, anybody ever been to Point Roberts? Yeah. So exactly. So you plane, and then you go into Canada, and then you come back around to the peninsula there, and that's Point Roberts. And so, as you might imagine, getting connectivity there has been a real challenge for Blaine. Ferndale has Beach Elementary, which is kind of that same area that has a challenge. There are 2 places in North Beach School District, Pacific Beach and Ocean Shores Elementary, that we're still having trouble getting fiber to. Natchez Valley, their high school is still on a wireless connection that's not very reliable, so we're going to try. So there are a few places in the state where we don't have connectivity, but the vast majority, there are 99. I should look on that. Anyway, it's very close to 100% that have at least a 10 megabit connection, and over 98% that have 100 megabit or higher connection. And then in terms of a wireless connectivity, that's the one that really surprised me. So we're up to like 95% of your buildings that have wireless, and of those, over 90% of those have it to every classroom. And again, those are dramatic growth points over the last few years. Not that they're always as robust as you would like, or not that there aren't places where you still have trouble getting signal and all those fun things, but again, just amazing to see some of those stats that way. Yeah. Computers for Kids continues to be a lifeline for about 70 or 80 districts. So if you're one of the districts that still needs help with that part, these are surplus used state computers that still meet minimum standards, and they work great, and we're delighted we're able to do about 5,000 or 6,000 a year statewide. So don't hesitate to keep letting me know if you're on the folks that could use that and find that helpful. So future initiatives. So I mentioned one of these in the digital citizenship one. I'm sorry, in the tech standards one. We have a partnership with the state library where they'll be able to provide funding for cadre of teacher librarians to provide 15 to 20 workshops at no cost, 6-hour free workshops with clock hours in various parts of the state for teacher librarians and for your tech TOSAs and anybody else that would find that helpful. So that will be coming this year, and we'll be developing the training for that on July 25th. Broadband expansion, as I mentioned, we did get some money from the legislature, which actually was surprising. It just kind of showed up there. Isn't that wonderful when those things happen? Fruit puppies, right? Anyway, to reach unserved schools, and actually the other schools that we're hoping to get to, there's 2 tribal schools right now that don't have broadband connectivity. So Lummi Nations and Pascal Sherman. So we'll be working with them as well. Some of you have unspent Category 2 funds. Now, in some cases, so everybody, not all of you have to deal with E-rate. So if E-rate is on your radar, and then if it's not, E-rate is the discount for telecommunications that brings in about $35 to $40 million a year in discounts to our state. And as part of E-rate, there's this thing called Category 2 that has 5-year budgets. And there are about 72 school districts in our state that have a significant amount of Category 2 funds left. There's 50 some odd that have never spent any of their Category 2 funds. Now that might be because E-rate came along a little bit too late and they had already spent the money there. If that's the case, blow us off, don't worry about it. On the other hand, it might be because they don't know about it. And so we're going to try to get the word out to districts that may not know about it to make sure that they're not overlooking the opportunity to get matching funds. And again, E-rate somewhere between 20 and 85% match, which is a real help if you need that in terms of wireless infrastructure or even wired infrastructure and things like that. So that'll be another initiative this coming year on my insurmountable opportunities list. We have a nascent thing that's been kind of emerging for almost a year and a half now called the Learning Space. So some of you are old enough to remember back in the late 90s, we actually had another thing called the Learning Space. It was a grant program with US West, and we intentionally stole the name from there with permission. But the idea of this one is to have kind of a one-stop shop for professional learning resources. And so we're kind of building as we go. And so sometime this year, I hope you'll get an official announcement. But just cue you, because parts of it are fully functional now and are really helpful right now. So the website is still in progress, but it'll talk about professional learning models and effective instruction ideas. PD Enroller, hopefully a lot of you have had a chance to use. It's getting to be the one-stop shop for all E-rate, wow, too much on the mind there. ESD and OSPI sponsored professional learning. So we have now 6 ESDs with the 7th coming on this summer, actually 7th and 8th coming on this summer. And the whole notion of PD Enroller is, wouldn't it be great if there was just one place where you could find out everything that's happening in the state being sponsored by ESDs or by OSPI in terms of workshops and things like that. And if you didn't know quite what the name of the workshop was, you could say, well, I'm looking for something on math or counselors or whatever else, and keyword search would show you that. Yeah, that's PD Enroller. It's there right now. And so if you haven't come across that, it's a piece of the learning space kind of ecosystem, but it's something that exists right now that absolutely you should be taking advantage of. We've standardized at least for professional development. So again, this is a delicate dance. We don't tell you what tools to use at the district level, so we're not saying that every district should be using Canvas as their learning management system. We are aware that a lot of districts already are, so it's not coincidental that we decided on that. But for ESD and OSPI online or blended learning, we'll be using Canvas and delivering things for that. A thing that's available right now is paraprofessional training, and so some of you have had a chance to see that. As we move into the kind of expanded requirements for paraprofessional preparation, that may well be a piece of what's available to them at no cost to help with the training part of that. And then we are in kind of a proof of concept stage with Workplace. How many of you at your district are using Workplace? So this is Facebook by any other name, but Yeah, I know you are, right? Yeah. All right. Yeah, okay, yeah. All right, not yet. That's fine. I know there are a few districts in the state. So workplace is very intriguing, yet somewhat challenging, as any platform like that is. Social media platform for informal sharing. And so if you think Facebook, but take away your crazy Uncle Al and all the rude things that he might post, or the rude things that Aunt Betty might post, or whatever else that way, and all the ads, and just had it only limited to educational use only, and all the data belongs to education at no cost, and so you could really limit those discussions to educationally appropriate things. That's what we're talking about as a potential platform to support professional learning. So what if you went to like an ACPE conference, and then afterwards there was an opportunity through the workplace to have a continuing dialogue with folks about different topics of interest that way. That's what we're envisioning for workplace. And so we're, again, just dipping our toe in the water. We've got the ESDs up and running more or less. I'm still checking with them to see how far more or less is. But again, we're trying to get, how can we really support that? Because it's, if we can find easy-to-use tools that don't have the downside that come with a lot of the other things, then we want to think in terms of that. All right.
Hey, Dennis,
Yes.
before you switch
Sure.
gears there,
Yep.
on the campus, do you know what the university system,
Yes,
they standardized?
they have
on that?
standard on campus with both higher education 4-year and 2-year institutions. Yeah.
So that would make some
Yeah.
sense for
Yeah.
us to
Yeah.
be down that
Oh
same
yeah. Yeah.
path.
That was another part of the non-coincidental part. Yeah. All right. So I promised you, besides the rosy look at all things coming that I'm excited about, a brief window into the things that keep me up at night or that concern me and that may concern you as well. It's probably not a complete list, but it definitely hits some of the things. But as we look through this, I'd love to get kind of your thoughts. Are there specific things in here that either A, the state might do to help, or B, that you found some useful resources on? So certainly one of them is student data privacy, and it's a broad brush. So it's everything from terms of services things to email unencrypted that educators might attach student-level data to and send through, and some of the other things around that. Yeah, we're shaking our heads at that, but we heard horror stories about it. Thoughts about student data privacy? I know there's some exploration with ACPE, with the Massachusetts Consortium on. You want to speak
It's
to that?
tomorrow, right?
Okay,
Yeah,
sorry, I'm
yeah.
spoiler alert there. Yep.
No,
Okay.
that's fine. But
Yeah.
it's the group that Alan Miedema talked about last year, and then we've actually brought the people from that group to start where are we,
Good.
and
Good.
ACPE is supporting the effort with some significant dollars because we can see the member benefit
And
to Washington and Oregon.
the notion there is, wouldn't it be great if the work that each of you are doing kind of piecemealed, say, either contracts you have with vendors that speak to this, or templates you have for that, or just a list of vendors that you've vetted, or it might look different in different places, but an opportunity for us to share one another in a fairly enclosed space that didn't get too public, because again, it's one of those delicate things of who owns it and how do you frame that? Yeah.
We don't all want to reinvent the wheel. Lots of us are smaller districts and just don't have the resources
Yeah.
to put towards that kind of thing. So
Anyway, so I think there's some interesting opportunities coming with that. Good. Adequate funding for tech support. I really do mean technology support. So, wow, that's a can of worms. So the prototypical school model believes that I think it's 0.67 FTE per 1,000 would be about right for tech support in your districts. Yeah, which is, first of all, that's a prototypical model. That means that it's just driving money out. It doesn't mean that they're actually giving you money dedicated for that. And when we did the analysis 3 years ago, I think we ended up at like 2.02 is the more preferred. Anyway, so there are some opportunities, discussions. even as the legislature believes that it's fully funded education, for us to do some tweaking to some of the models, and that's one place where I'm hoping we can have some advocacy. Again, OSPI never lobbies or things like that, but if I get an opportunity to share data, like you give me about the fact that right now it's between 300 and 500 computers per tech that you have supporting things. Yeah, how many businesses would put up with that? And that's about the average statewide, in our state is about 300 to 500 computers per tech.
Can I just
yeah.
tiny little?
Sure, please, absolutely.
In addition to tech support, just the mere fact that we have so many more devices to keep track of.
There is, yeah.
Inventory control.
That's a really good point. Yep. That's a really good point.
You know, they always talk about, well, just have people figure it out themselves.
Yeah.
Well, nobody's going to figure it out independently.
Right. Yeah.
As districts move to one-to-one,
yeah.
I don't know about you guys, but that's been one of our biggest challenges.
It is a huge undertaking. Yeah.
Well, I'd say too, it isn't necessarily just on our own devices. You're looking at building security now too.
Yes. Well, and the kind of the expansion of that's a good point. Yep.
HVAC.
Yep.
Copiers. I mean, anything you plug in.
Right. Yeah.
We're not
Good.
the first, but we're going to be putting out a requisition for a digital security tech.
Wow. Yeah.
That's going to be almost low voltage to a certain extent.
Right.
Yeah. The roof's beginning to leak everywhere has an adverse effect on technology.
Yeah. Really good point. Yeah. To say nothing of refreshing the devices we have now that we've been buying with bonds and levies, which takes me to the next one, and I don't know the full answer to this, but as you know, the McCleary legislative fix, if you will, basically traded the state providing a higher level of property tax support for districts in exchange for them having less taxing capacity at the local level. It's still unknown what that really means, and so I don't have all the answers for that, but I can tell you that that's a big concern, especially because bonds and levies for technology have been a major support for a lot of your districts that way.
It was really close this year.
Yeah.
It was really close. In my case, I live in Maple Valley. They got lucky they passed the second one.
Right. Well,
With just the levy.
Just
the M&O levy.
Yeah. Anyway, but that's certainly another area that if nothing else, we need some clarification on and support. Professional development for technology integration is an ongoing funding challenge for you and all of us. Equity of access to technology in schools, I mentioned this in the previous one too, that the fact that the devices are there doesn't always translate into student access to those devices. And so there's some real work to be done in terms of kind of who has access to what and making sure that it's across the board and not just if that teacher decides to allow the students to do that. The homework gap outside of school is a huge issue, especially those of you who are in rural areas. In many cases, kids go home to places where you can't get broadband at any price, and so that's a big challenge. We do have some creative things that are being explored. So I know Darren was here at the last session. Pullman School District has Wi-Fi on their buses and has found that really helpful twofold. One is for kids just in terms of who have a long bus ride there, but also for like athletes and folks who have activities after school, the hour and a half that they're going to another place for an event, they can be using that. So that's one kind of interesting thing. There's also an intriguing model out of Virginia that uses white in the television spectrum to be able to essentially send out the wireless signal from the school, but in focused ways that they can just use it on the school network for students up to about 30 miles away. And so kind of watching that. Yeah. Again, it's a strange idea, but again, if you're some of your urban areas that have some high poverty areas, that might be really helpful. I hesitate to even bring up Kent because they've had so many challenges lately, but I know they had experimented with some hotspots in community centers and things like that. So again, there's some really intriguing models to be thinking about. But that whole idea of access outside of school, even if they have a device to take home, can they get access to the Wi-Fi and to use stuff? So definitely an issue. Oh, website accessibility. Yeah, there are 3 or 4 of you around the room that I know are going, did you have to ruin my day by saying that? Yeah. For any of you who haven't had the insurmountable opportunity of making sure that your school website is fully accessible, that's probably coming real soon to a district near you. How many of you have
Got a call from OCRs?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
I got a letter, they dropped a complaint against us. So
yeah. No. And so.
No.
Oh well.
They say they're using a burden or some undue burden.
Well, and
it's the serial.
Did you guys get the new agreement?
We didn't because we were before it even. So
were we. We had all our stuff turned in too. And they still gave us the new agreement and said, you can get rid of your old one and do this one instead.
Wow. I'll have to ask.
And that was like a month ago.
Yeah. Anyway.
But that had to do with the serial complainers.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
So the bulk complainers.
All right. That's different. Yeah. Now we're probably still.
Yeah, you're probably
still on track of that. So, just so you know, I made sure that before I put this presentation up on my Moodle site for you to download if you want to, it is ADA compliant, and that's one of the ongoing insurmountable opportunities at my office that some of you are dealing with as well. Now, we say it kind of tongue-in-cheek, and yet it is something that we really do care about. We really do want to make sure that to the extent we can, whether it's language or disability or whatever else it is, that all the things that we make available are there for the public in whatever way they need it. And so it's not something that we're taking lightly. On the other hand, it's also probably not something that needs to be foisted down our throats. It's probably something if we could really take it in a more measured way over time, that's something. Yeah. It's absolutely the right thing to do. Yeah.
It's a matter of getting there.
Right. And where are the places where it may or may not be needed? So, for instance, OSPI, our practice was always every time we did a webinar, we'd record it and we'd post it. Okay? First of all, how many people went back and watched those webinars? Very few. Okay? Because for the most part, if you've missed it, you'll look for the PowerPoint and then consume it that way, as opposed to go back and spend the hour or 2 hours or whatever to watch it again. But now we're at the place where if we're going to post it, we would have to make sure it's closed caption. Is that worth the effort? And so again, it's really more about thinking about who's the audience it's intended for. Do you need to make that effort, or is your time spent better on other things? So again, it's a give and take kind of thing, but hopefully at least get some good conversations going about what's needed and what's not. So, for example, when we put out the survey just recently, talking about surveys, that the superintendent wants public input on what would they like to see as priorities for education spending the next 2 or 3 years. They intentionally did it in 10 different languages and made it fully accessible and things like that. That's the kind of thing, absolutely. We really do want to, be very, very thoughtful about making it as fully accessible as we can. So there are times when that's very appropriate. Yeah.
Just to throw a couple of things out there for those of you that may be looking at this, and a lot of us are Google environments, so you don't have the accessibility tools that you get in Office. Rackle does have tools for Google Docs, slides, and spreadsheets now that does the same kind of accessibility check. Docs is the only one you have to pay for right now, but I think they'll probably bring slides along. And then we've been collecting VPAT documents from third party, so if you also have some, we can start sharing.
That would be neat, yeah. So would you explain what that is for anybody who doesn't know?
VPAT is a voluntary product accessibility template. There's 2 different kinds, and the one that the Office of Civil Rights uses is the WCAG 2.0 AA standard, which is like, I don't know, 50 things that a vendor has to say, I'm compliant with this, I'm not compliant with this. They will try and give you the 508 VPAT, which has like 6 things related to the web, and we can't just a giant checklist. And if they say they're not meeting a particular standard, you have to figure out if you can address that standard or how you would address that standard for somebody who has a disability that's affected by their system not having that.
Yeah. Good. Thanks. So another opportunity for sharing and learning from one another.
It has blown the minds of almost all the vendors we sent it to.
Yes.
They're like, what is this?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's crazy.
Yeah. That's what I've been able to do. All right, online assessment. There are some things that I have concerns about that some of you may have as well. So certainly, I mentioned the text-to-speech, speech-to-text. Wouldn't it be great if whatever the student normally uses would just work on whatever device they're on, and when they get so that's going to be our goal. Short of that, wouldn't it be great if it was a built-in accommodation within the AR secure browser? Yeah.
So that speech-to-text stuff didn't really come up until this year for us.
Yeah. No.
I was like, okay, why? All of a sudden, the teachers and principals were like, we need to have this. And I was like, yeah, okay, why all of a sudden?
And quite honestly, I think it was just kind of overlooked in the past, and because I had a few inquiries about it, and then, as I mentioned, we first were told by AR the only thing that would work would be dragging naturally speaking, and now it turns out that read and write will work as well.
We've made it work with the built-in Microsoft.
Yes, but you have to do some real training with that, and actually the built-in Mac one will do that too.
Then we told them, we'll hire you as a scribe if you need it.
There you go. Yeah. A second issue that's going to come up because we're getting close to 5 or 6 years of Chromebooks around is end of life for Chromebooks. So right now the approach is that it's the support from AR for the secure browser is kind of on a rolling basis as those updates come. So right now it's kind of 60 through 65, and it'll be 60 through 66 soon. But what happens when you get to a place where your Chromebook won't go to 70 or whatever the next number is going to be for next year? And how do we know that in advance so you can plan accordingly and start thinking about replacement cycle if you need to and stuff? Yeah, and so there's pieces of that puzzle. So they've kind of said about 5.5 or 6 years for most Chromebooks. But what does that really mean? And about's not going to do you a lot of good. You really need to know for specific models. Are there certain ones that are going to time out sooner? And so again, I just want to get us some clarification so we can help you make good decisions about that. Again, it's one of those wonderful decisions about, hey, we've actually got a lot more devices out there, so we can be thinking about that. And then another piece that actually was available this year but wasn't approved for this year. Huh?
Not in Washington.
Yeah, exactly. It's called Microsoft Take a Test. It works on Windows 10. So the approach that it does is very similar to the kiosk mode for Chromebooks in that essentially you're logging into not a guest account, but an external account before you actually log into the system, and then it launches the Take a Test. And to my knowledge, it works just fine. Again, we didn't approve it for this year because we didn't have enough time to fully test it, but we certainly want to for next year. To me, that raises a whole other question of, though, how do we make sure that there aren't other hidden things that come behind the scenes that pop up and bite us later on? So does it work with every device except for this version of HP whatever or this version of a tablet or anyway? So again, we want to make sure that we really do due diligence so that you're not finding out later on that, oh well, it works but not with the ones you're using. And so
I think it only works with the Intune for Education as well right now.
Yes.
It works with all of those.
Oh, really?
It's built in.
Yeah, so the original positioning though would be for only the kind of the stripped down version, and it works with all of them. And I think the other concern, and it's a legitimate one, is the stripped down version going to be the new Windows RT and have its own problems that way? So
we did a proof of concept with it.
Yeah.
State of California's portal actually supports it
Yes.
So we did a build out of it. The main thing we were testing for is essentially we're running into the same challenges with HP driver stack issues, functionality issues. So the same
the forbidden
OS
apps and
driver
stuff is
stack
still,
issues are still there, but in terms of the app blocking pieces, the
Right.
Jasmine does a fairly good job.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's definitely something. Are there other things that keep you up at night, or that I should be thinking about, or that I might be helping with? So if you think of some, please be sure to let me know. I'm there for. Can't always solve it, but as you see with online testing, I'd rather let you know about the problems in advance than have you find out the hard way later on, because that's the least we can do to support what you're doing and hopefully be real proactive on some of these things too. So if there are things around, whether it's online assessment or funding or whatever else, that if they just did this or stuff, please let me know. I don't always have access to that, but sometimes I get in conversations where I actually get to say, when I look at the connectivity, it looks really good. However, tech support is still a challenge. And so anytime I can advocate on your behalf, I'm happy to. Yeah?
It's been maybe a year now, or it's been a while. Sent you an email. I had some concerns after the legislature's changes here a year plus back, concerning capital projects levies available for technology uses. And you forwarded me on to another individual who that never returned.
Well, and
so I still have reached out to other districts, and they've given me their opinions, but I've never really seen anything from OSPI as far as technology levies being available.
And the honest answer is we don't really fully know.
Okay.
So what we do know is that the levy side will probably be subject to the same limitations that will happen on operating levies of any kind. The bond side is the one that I don't have any sort of clear answer for you on, and that's probably in some cases the more interesting one. Yeah.
So my peers are indicating to me that they feel like that the technology levies are still going to be available for technology use, encompassing both hardware and software.
Maybe I said that wrong. It's not that they're going to stop being available, but there will be limitations on the cap for that. As
part of the $1.50?
No, it's no. That's not what we're talking about. So there's a very complicated formula based on how they traded the property tax thing for what level of taxing authority each district has for levies. Okay. And to the extent that the technology levy fits under that, then it absolutely can continue as before. So that hasn't changed. But if your question was, what's that limit, that's what we're still trying to get good guidance on. Yeah.
I think I know what you're saying. So if you're already at your limit.
Yes.
So a tech levy on top of that isn't going to happen, right? Because you're already reached your.
That's my understanding. Yes.
Our district, Walla, we're in a really bad situation because we had a levy going that was much higher than normal.
Yep.
And so we're actually going to see a major dip in funding.
Yes, University Place, my local district, is having the same trouble. I think Bethel is another one that has that. Olympia, yeah. So, but
that's good to know because that's not the answer that I was hearing from.
Well, and again, it depends on how you ask the question. So, will the levy still be available? Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
But is there some level of capping on those? And even that got adjusted in this last legislative session, so that's part of what I'm still trying to figure out.
So we just passed one, and we got cut down from like $3.30 to $1.50 on our M&O, which is brutal.
M&O, right?
Brutal. Well, it's not M&O anymore, whatever it is.
Right.
But we kept our tax rate, even encompassing what the state tax is going to be, because it's different for everybody. We had to figure that in with the whole thing. We kept our tax collection rate the same, so we moved up our tech levy to meet that same collection amount.
Oh.
Because that's what we told our voters.
Okay.
The overall picture bond, M&O, and tech levy will always be around this dollar figure.
So do you know Mark? Be sure to talk to him. Yeah.
That was what I thought people were telling me.
Well, and that makes sense to me. I just hadn't heard it as clearly explained that way. I like that. Yeah. No, that's good because it's such a complicated thing. But if you can strip it away to not increasing their overall tax rate, that's the notion behind all the gerrymandering or fixing it that was supposed to be happening anyway. Was that it wasn't that we were going to penalize districts that, unfortunately, like Walla Walla, that had even better in that, but that their overall tax rate wouldn't change. And to the extent that you can frame it that way, that's good to know. Good.
Yeah. I'm not saying that they're going to cap the capital levy.
The bond?
No, the capital levy.
No, capital levy, I think are separate. Yeah.
Okay.
So
because we have the enrichment levy, which we have to go down to $1.50.
Right. That's yeah.
And then we have the capital
right.
levy, and then we have a bond.
At least at this moment in time, those are in different places. Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Right. Yeah. It's the.
I'm going to retire now.
Yeah. No. It's
that's where we get our funding.
the thing that's closest to an M&O thing, or what used to be an M&O thing, is what has the limitations on it.
Right. Okay,
Yes.
I got
that. Okay. Maybe I did say that. Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Yep. Right. Yeah.
Other questions for Dennis to confuse us? Right?
Really? Yes. Can I confuse you further? But by the way, if I ever do get some good guidance on that, yeah. The other thing I'll tell you is on some of these, I'm very careful what I ask.
Oh, yeah.
Because sometimes only after an attorney looks at something and gives us an opinion that we may or may not want to know. You didn't hear me say that, but again, there are some things I'm just real careful what I ask. Or at least I ask in certain ways. Yeah. Learned the hard way on that one. All right. Well, thank you all, and have a great evening. Right.
Yeah. So there's think tanks going on at 5:15.
Oh yeah.
I want to hear from Marty. He's going to be next door. And thank you very much, Dennis.
Yeah. You betcha.